Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 598 for the 29.March, 2020. Richard Saunders coming to you from the streets of Sydney, Australia, where I'm off for my pre-dawn exercise walk. Very important to keep routines. And every now and then a car will drive by on a nearby street, but apart from that, it's, well, I don't have to tell you. It's like I've walked out in some sort of funny Hollywood movie, really. Very strange. Coming up on this week's show, Maynard talks to astronomer Kirsten Banks about a comet that's heading our way, Comet Atlas. Hopefully this will be quite visible in the northern hemisphere and northern parts of Australia. And it's unknown, but it could be quite spectacular. It could be very bright in the sky, so Maynard chats to Kirsten about that and other matters relating to one of my favourite topics, astronomy. Following that, we have a message from Michelle Franklin in the Northern Territory about how that area of Australia is coping, dealing with the current COVID situation. I've just come to a table here in a nearby park, and it's full of empty beer bottles. I wonder what was going on here last night. Next up, we have the return of Logical Fallacies with Michelle Bijkersma. This week, Michelle looks at post hoc, ergo proptor hoc. Then another message from one of our reporters, Heidi Robertson, from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. Now, Heidi is going to tell us what it's like to be a mum at home, suddenly finding herself in the role of teacher, like many people are around the world. Odd bird life here in the park. What's that? Still a bit quiet. The sun's not up yet. Somebody over there walking their dog. Pretty quiet. Then to round off the show, it's the Book of Tim, with part 2 of Tim's reading of the adventure we had some years ago testing water diviners. I'm walking around a gazebo, a bandstand that was built probably 100 years ago. Again, in this huge park, there are just 2 people I can just see through the gloom getting their daily exercise. Yes, we had a lot of rain last night. Just walking up across the garden here, up to some steps. And it's interesting now working on the Skeptic Zone, because I had hoped that in a couple of weeks we'd have a special think tank for the 600 episode of the show. And I'd get the local team in Sydney here and some guests to come to the club at the end of the street, and we'd all have a nice dinner and do a group recording. Well, needless to say, I'll have to change those plans. It's a pity not being able to see lots of people, but as we're all discovering, online connections with others can still be great. And online connections with people that you miss or people that you love is better than nothing, I guess. I would hate to think what a similar situation would have been like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I guess the phone lines would be ringing hot with people constantly calling each other. But now we can have home office, home meetings, Skyping and all the rest of it. There will be some new industries being born at the moment. Still bizarre walking around this empty park. Anyway, now it's time for me to keep on walking, to get those kilometres up, to keep fit. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
On the line, I've got someone. Look, there could be some big stuff in the sky, people. It's Cub Reporter Maynard here, putting on my astrophysicist hat. But I think we should actually talk to a real astrophysicist, which is Kirsten Banks. Hi, Kirsten. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. People would have seen you plenty of sceptical things over the years, presenting all sorts of things. I saw you last hunting for emu eggs.
Yeah. I brought my emu call along onto the stage, and unfortunately no emus came along.
Oh,
Well,
you don't get many at Chatswood these days.
No, not these days.
Well, you do get turkey mounds, bush turkey mounds. They happen at Chatswood.
They do, yes.
Now,
But unfortunately no emus.
well, look, I'm ringing you because it's going to be a big kerfuffle in the Northern Hemisphere fairly shortly, because we're going to have a near-Earth object or a comet come our way, and it's called the Atlas Comet, or C2019Y4, and it will be visible with the naked eye, but in the Northern Hemisphere only, if it doesn't break up. Tell us all about it.
So this new comet was discovered using the Atlas system, so it's the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, which sounds pretty dire. It does actually look for asteroids that may potentially impact the Earth. However, it does sometimes find comets like this one, C/2019Y4. Very catchy name, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think the Atlas Comet is a much better name for it. And you can see it already through binoculars. Have you got your home telescope and had a look at it yet?
I do have my home telescope, but unfortunately it's a bit too low in the sky for us here in Australia. It's over in the northwestern sky, which from where I am looks directly over the Sydney city.
Oh, bummer. Yeah, because we won't see this at all in the Southern Hemisphere, will we?
Well, if you're lucky enough to be a bit further north than us in Sydney, you might be able to see it pretty okay, because it will be near Venus when it starts getting quite bright. And I'm very excited, and I wish I was in the Northern Hemisphere, so I'm very happy for our Northern Hemisphere friends to be enjoying this in a few months' time. But currently, this comet, the Atlas Comet, is crossing Mars's orbit and coming into the inner solar system. So when comets come into the central part of our solar system, they're starting to get vaporized and melted, essentially, by the heat and the radiation of the sun. Those comets are essentially dirty snowballs. So when they come close
they're
to the
filthy.
sun,
They're
they start to
filthy, dirty snowballs. Like, I've had enough of them. They come around here and they're filthy.
That's right, but sometimes they leave us a lovely little view.
Oh, that's true. So will we see, is it the reflection of the ice in the comet that makes them so visible, or just the fact they're just so close to the sun?
Well, the fact that they're so close to the sun, depending on how big they are, I'm pretty sure, and so they start to get vaporized by the sun. So we see this ice tail, this vaporization tail, as it moves closer to the sun. At the moment, as I said, it's moving past Mars and coming close to the Earth. It will be closest to the Earth on the 23rd of May this year. But when I say close, it'll be about 117 million kilometres away from the Earth, which is about 303 times the distance from us to the moon.
I wanted to bring this up with you because I was looking this up because I recommend, and there should be a link in the show notes to the Near-Earth Object table, and they've got everything there in lunar units, lunar distance and astronomical units. Now, what do they mean to someone like me who just goes down to the shops? What is a lunar distance and an astronomical unit?
So a lunar distance, we'll start with that one because that's the smaller one. It's the average distance that the Earth is from the moon, or the moon is from the Earth, whichever way you'd like to look at it, which is usually around 300,000 kilometres, more or less.
Well, I saw on the day we're recording this, there's something coming through at 0.6 of a lunar distance. That sounds close.
That is pretty close, but 0.6 of a lunar distance would be still about 170,000 kilometres away, so I'm not too worried about that one.
Okay. And everything else seems to be coming a lot further than that. And on the Sunday that this goes out, I see there's something at 2.9 lunar distance. So that's fairly safe.
That's fairly safe, yes.
Yeah. Oh, look, and look, there's a bit of talk that this might be this comet, the comet Atlas Comet, might be part of the great comet of 1844 that might have broken up when it ran around that time. Have you heard anything about that?
I have heard a little bit about that. It's quite interesting to see that it might be just a bit of a chunk of this extra comet that's come by earlier.
Yeah, and is it possible that it could actually break up by the sun's gravity and we might not see it at all from the Northern Hemisphere?
Possibly. I have my fingers crossed that doesn't happen, because the predictions they've made of how bright this comet might be is possibly it will be brighter than Venus. And Venus, if you've seen it in the night sky, it is a brilliantly bright white light. It's quite fantastic. So if this comet is brighter than Venus, I really hope we get to see that, because that would be fantastic, especially since I missed Halley's Comet by 11 years.
I saw that. I saw that from the beach once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. And this is going to be brighter than that?
Potentially, yes.
Now, of course,
that's if it doesn't break up.
now people got a bit, got their knickers in a knot when that went through. And of course, every time Halley's Comet comes past, people go, oh, it's a portent, it's a harbinger of something evil and bad. And that will be when a lot of people are going to be locked in their homes, possibly with SARS-like symptoms.
It could very well be a bit of a bad omen, which comets and the appearance of comets in mythology and other cultural astronomies have usually been bad omens, but they can be good omens as well. So I'd like to say to everyone that this is a good omen. I think it will be fantastic, and it will be a great way for the world to kind of band together and enjoy this astronomical light show. Fingers crossed, if it does happen, we can enjoy that together in solidarity, in isolation.
And as someone with an Indigenous background, what did the Indigenous population of Australia make of comets? Did they have were comets specifically different to other things they observed in the sky?
Comets definitely were different, and there are occurrences of comets in the literature and in stories. I don't know enough about comets to speak more broadly on it, but they were definitely covered. If you want to learn more about comets in Aboriginal astronomy from Australia, you can go to the aboriginalastronomy.com.au website, and you can learn all about comets from there.
And you're pretty sure that we won't be able to see it anywhere in Australia?
We should be able to see it. So from Sydney, it will be near Venus when it starts to get exciting. Unfortunately, comets can be quite unpredictable, so we'll just have to wait and see. But if you're anywhere further north than Sydney, you should have a good chance of seeing it higher in the sky.
And it's on such a long elliptical orbit that it won't be back for thousands of years, will it?
Exactly. It's coming in so tight to the sun that if it does survive coming around the sun, it'll scoot away for a very long time before it ever decides to come back.
Have we got anything else like that coming up interesting in the year? Is there anything more visible in the sky? We can go, oh, well, Kirsten told us about that, so shut up.
Well, there's one thing I'm very excited about, which is happening near Christmas this year. We have what's called a great conjunction. So this is where we're talking about planets. So planets can sometimes appear close to each other in the sky. There are some great photos of two planets and the moon and a crescent moon making a smiley face in the sky. Those are great photos to see. But in late December this year, we will see Jupiter and Saturn get so close to each other that they'll look like one star.
Wow, that's going to be amazing. Is there an app you've got on your phone that you'd recommend that people have to point at the night sky? I've seen them where you can point it and it does the working it out for you.
Yes, it is Star Walk or Sky Guide. All of them are pretty good because they use generally the same sort of database, and we know where stars and planets are going to be at any time for the next 100 times n years, because we've been studying the stars for many, many years.
Look, and I like to bring this up because I always enjoy a good kerfuffle here. I've always been puzzled by what that hexagonal shape on is it the North Pole of Neptune is like? It doesn't look like a natural feature. What do you think's going on there?
It does look very interesting, doesn't it? It seems to me that it's some sort of resonance with the spinning of the planet and the movement of gas and wind around that area. There's one on Saturn as well.
Oh, hang on. Well, I mean, hey, now come on, that doesn't sound natural. That's sounding a bit like someone's put something there.
Well, I guess we'll just have to go and have a look someday.
I'm sure we will. Look, what's your favourite planet in the solar system, by the way? Have you got one? Because there's quite a good one. I mean, Saturn's pretty fantastic with the rings, but Jupiter's got a lot going for it. Are you a gas giant girl?
I definitely am a gas giant girl, and I have to say, Saturn always makes me feel good inside. Plus, Saturn is clearly the king of all planets in the solar system now because A, it has the best rings, undoubtedly, and B, it now has more confirmed moons than Jupiter.
Well, that's because I'm a Jupiter kind of person, just because it's so big and it protects us from stuff hitting us.
That's very true.
That is a good thing.
It's the protector of the solar system.
It does that kind of thing. And can we ever see Pluto at all very easily in the night sky? It's just so far away and it's not reflective. Do we ever get to see it?
It's very far away, it's very small, so we can never see it with the naked eye in the night sky. Even with small telescopes, you need to attach a camera at the back of a telescope and take a long exposure to leave your camera lens open for at least 10 seconds just to see a little speck of Pluto, which I've seen once.
Look, I find it's a bit unusual that people who also watch the sky and have a look around it, like astrologers, haven't mentioned anything about this comet yet, and it's not visible yet, but you think that they would be saying something about it already since they predict stuff.
Yeah, you'd think so. But, you know what I think about astronomy and astrology. Astrology is not even a pseudoscience. It's not scientific. But having said that, if you believe in astrology, I think that's great, because that means you're looking at the stars and you're appreciating our universe for how you want to interpret it. And I think that's all I'm happy with.
Wow, very diplomatic, Kirsten. And as a shout-out, what's your favourite constellation before we go?
Favourite constellation? Ooh, at the moment?
Yeah, come on. For someone in your trade to pick their favourite constellation, that could cause a fight.
It could. I would have to say the Scorpion.
Why is that?
It was the first constellation I was ever shown in the night sky other than the Southern Cross, and it's been held in my heart for a very long time.
Tell me, with everyone sort of in lockdown at the moment, staying at home, is there any less light pollution than usual?
Not that I've noticed, but I think we should change that. Since people aren't really going out at nighttime, there's not much need for all of this excess light pollution, all the lights can be turned down or turned off. I think that we should make a difference about this. Let's all enjoy the night sky while we can. At the moment, it's quite cloudy where I am, so I can't really enjoy it. But when it is clear, let's try and enjoy and feel that solidarity that we know our place in our universe and that our universe is gorgeous and beautiful and inspiring.
And one last controversial question. What about, is it Elon Musk and his mini satellites? How do you feel about that as someone who looks at the sky all the time as a job?
Well, I could go into a very long rant about this. I'm not happy about this, as many astronomers are not happy about this. If you'd like to hear more about what I have to say about that, you can listen to many podcast episodes on The Scientists, where myself and my co-host, Angel Lopez Sanchez, go through all the issues we have with Starlink.
And where can we find that on the web?
You can find it on all of your favourite podcasting apps, Spotify, but we do post them onto SoundCloud. So if you want to get them straight away, they'll be on SoundCloud.
Kirsten, thank you very much for your time today. And it's going to be a comment. We might not see it, we might see it, but do not be afraid.
That's right.
I'm pretty much of a scaredy cat at the best of times, but you've made me feel much better. Thank you, Kirsten Banks.
My pleasure.
Hi, this is Dr. Pamela Gay from Astronomy Cast. Each week, Fraser Kane and I take our listeners on a fact-based journey through the cosmos. With our weekly podcast, we explain not just what we know, but how we know what we know about this universe that we share. Check us out at astronomycast.com and look for us in iTunes, Google Play, and wherever you download podcasts. See you online.
Life is wild. With Michelle Franklin.
Hi guys, this is reporter Michelle Franklin checking in from the Northern Territory, also known as the Top End here in Australia. I must say that, for better or for worse, this is the first time that I can remember where I really feel like part of a whole planet. No matter where we are or what we're doing, we're all facing the same thing, and we're all on the same side against this one common enemy. No matter who you talk to, we're all thinking about it, and you don't even have to bring it up. We all just know what the main topic of conversation's going to be. I know it's a strange way to think of it, but this really is a unifying event. Things in the NT are actually going really well from what I can tell. Yes, we have all the same societal shutdowns and the flow-on economic issues that everyone else is facing, but aside from that, we really are still in the very early stages. We have had a few cases of people bringing the virus into the NT, either from overseas or from interstate, but due to the border restrictions and the quarantine measures that have been put in place, everyone's been very successful with their social distancing and no one's actually passed the virus on to anyone else. The few cases we have had, 14 currently, have all either fully recovered or they're in isolation still with no cross-contamination happening. I think this is a good indication of what social distancing can achieve, and I'm sure it helps that our population density averages out to roughly 0.16 people per square kilometre, although that's a little misleading. In Darwin City it gets as high as 45 per square kilometre. The changes for me have been minor in the grand scheme, but it still feels like a whole new world. For now, I'm still going to my job every day, and what that looks like is changing rapidly. We're not in the office much anymore, but fieldwork is still going ahead as long as we can maintain the social distances. Travel is heavily restricted to avoid the risk of spreading it into the Aboriginal communities of the NT. I drove to Katherine and back yesterday, and I went through 2 police checkpoints where I was questioned on my origin and destination. Apparently this is just one of the measures in place to prevent travel and subsequent spread into the vulnerable populations that are all around us here. Visiting cattle stations isn't the same either. Instead of dropping into the homestead for a cuppa and a scone, now we just drive straight past a locked gate and head straight to our study sites with just a radio in for welfare checks. The schools are still open for now, but I've chosen to voluntarily pull my kids out for the time being, and luckily I'm in a position where I can do that. There are some people who don't have that option. But things are changing fast these days, and I have no idea what will be happening next week. So for now, we're safe and well up here, and I'm actually more concerned about my friends and family in the south, especially those who have casual employment or those that rely on others who may be doing it tough. I know that the Skeptic Zone relies on the patronage of you, the listeners, and of course many of you are now going to be struggling. But if you can afford to keep contributing, I know it would make a world of difference for Richard. So thank you to those who can continue to help, and for those who can't, don't feel bad. We will all get through this however we can, and trust that the Zone will make it through too.
Yalansavar ekibi bir grup skeptik ve bilim tutkununun bir araya gelmesiyle oluşmuş gönüllü bir ekip olup amacı toplumda eleştirel düşünce alışkanlığını yaymak ve muhtelif asılsız iddiaları irdelemektir. Bu bölümde bahsettiğimiz konulara ve farklı pek çok yazımıza yalansavar.org adresindeki web sitemizden ulaşabilirsiniz. Sosyal medyada bizi Yalansavar kullanıcı adı ile Twitter'dan ve Facebook sayfamızdan takip edebilir. Farklı konularda hazırladığımız video ve görüntülü sohbetleri ise Yalansavar'ın YouTube kanalından izleyebilirsiniz. Bizimle iletişim kurmak isterseniz lütfen yalansavar@gmail.com adresinden bize e-posta gönderin. Bir sonraki bölümde görüşmek dileğiyle sağlıcakla kalın.
Logical fallacies. What are logical fallacies, and why is it important that critical thinkers should know about them? A logical fallacy is an error we can make in reasoning, but it usually crops up when we are discussing or arguing our point of view. Some people might even knowingly use them to try and score cheap points in an argument due to intellectual laziness. They are traps we can fall into But if we know what to look out for, we can spot them when they occur and stop ourselves from using them. This week we'll look at post hoc, ergo, proptor hoc.
Also known as assuming the cause, the faulty causal assumption, or just post hoc. This is when two events occur in succession, and it is believed that the first event must have caused the second event. Or to put it another way, the second event is a result of the first event.
It's the fallacy that applies when believing in superstition like positive outcomes due to lucky charms, etc. It also commonly occurs when alternative medicine is credited as providing a cure or science-based medicine is blamed for an unrelated condition. We all know mother's chicken soup will cure the common cold, right? I mean, only a few days after you eat some, the cold will get better.
I put up an umbrella in the house today, and you know what? Shortly after, I lost my wallet.
Good things and bad things happen to us all. Normally, that's just part of everyday life and we don't think much about it. Once in a while, however, something very bad happens to us and we are left looking for a reason. Putting up an umbrella inside, walking under a ladder, or a black cat crossing your path are all classic superstitions, and it's easy to see why some people might latch onto these when looking for a reason as to why they had bad luck later on. Oh, and don't forget, superstitions are, as Webster's dictionary has it, a belief or practice resulting from ignorance, fear of the unknown, trust in magic or chance, or a false conception of causation.
I was perfectly healthy until I started using a 5G cell phone. Now I have cancer.
It could be insensitive to start schooling a person battling cancer on its possible causes. But I think we can understand how people need to find a reason for things, especially things they are trying to come to terms with, even if they come to the wrong conclusion. Sometimes any conclusion is better than none at all. Why did this happen to me? Is a question as old as our species. In this case, the reality is that while ionising radiation is indeed dangerous, the non-ionising level of radiation we are exposed to via 5G does not present any known risks to us. The worst we are likely to experience is warming on the skin that is so slight that we won't even notice it. But this fact doesn't stop people from blaming it for health problems, real or imagined.
I was suffering from too many negative emotions until I tried smudging. Since then, my mind is clear and I feel positive.
Smudging is a practice trending in the wellness industry that has been popularised by social media. In Western culture, it involves burning small bundles of foliage containing white sage that are commercially available in kits. It is based on the ancient ceremonial practice of sage burning by First Nations people in the Americas. Maybe in some ways smudging does offer some help. Perhaps the act of waving the smoking sticks around is enjoyable, and negative emotions are replaced with positive ones. And let's not forget how powerful rituals are in human societies. However, there are no chemical properties of smoke that promote emotional and physical health. In fact, inhaling smoke is more likely to cause harm. Therefore, it is a fallacy to think the improvement is caused by the smoky air per se. It could also be a placebo effect, or a mood that eventually improves on its own anyway.
My child was perfectly fine until they had the MMR vaccine. Then, only months later, they were diagnosed with autism.
Here we see causality assigned incorrectly, and the vaccines blamed as a cause for what is probably a genetic condition. From systematic reviews of studies based on millions of children around the world, we know that vaccines do not result in children developing autism. The love and the need you have to protect your children can very easily colour your thinking. How satisfying it is when we think we have found the reason why something is happening. It's a very deep need within us all to find out the answer to the age-old question, why? Jumping to a false conclusion can be more satisfying than having no conclusion at all. In the end, when assigning credit or blame to one occurrence that preceded another, be sure that you have credible evidence that there really is a true cause and effect relationship. Knowing a logical fallacy when you hear one, and even knowing its name, is important when arguing your point of view. However, you may come across as arrogant and not get very far if you call it out by name to your opponent when you hear it being used. If your opponent calls you out for using one, it's time to stop and think about how you are making your case. Use your knowledge of logical fallacies wisely, and remember that even if your point of view is right and you know all the pitfalls in arguing your case, it doesn't always mean you'll win on the day. And as skeptics, we must also remember that we too can be wrong at times. I'm Michelle Bijkersma from the Vic Skeptics. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Brad Mackay and I'm a GP. Coronavirus is dangerous. You can spread the virus even when you don't have symptoms, which means you're putting yourself and your loved ones at risk if you leave the house. Please stay at home.
It's the Raw Skeptic Report with Heidi Robertson.
Hello everyone, Heidi Robertson from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. I don't know about you, but I'm going through periods of time when I can't quite believe this situation is happening. It's surreal, like we're in the Twilight Zone or something. Speaking of which, I am currently watching the original series of The Twilight Zone with my kids, 1 episode a day. 2 short months ago, myself and my family were returning from a family holiday in Japan. We never would have predicted that a few weeks later we would be in self-isolation, homeschooling, me out of work, and my husband's industry in construction also threatened. I want to extend my heartfelt sympathies and empathy to you all out there if you are similarly facing financial and emotional hardship right now. Not that my empathy helps in any tangible way, but it is there nonetheless. It's really hard not knowing what the future will hold. The uncertainty is really difficult to deal with. My focus right now is on taking each day as it comes and trying to make sure our kids are as protected as they can be, both from the virus and from the saturation of COVID-19 information that can be so easy to succumb to. They need, and for that matter I need, to be informed and aware, but not scared out of their minds. And that is a delicate balance to maintain. So here are a few things I've found that I can be positive about. My kids are finding ways to be creative with their sudden change in routine. Day 1 of homeschooling saw my youngest, 11 years of age, son blow up 6 balloons. he drew faces on each one. He then lined up the kitchen stools in a school bus seat formation, put one balloon on each kitchen stool, and then we all pretended to hop on the bus and drive the balloons to school. I'm becoming more involved in their learning. We have created a timetable which we've refined every day, and it includes academic work, quiet time, play time, and exercise time. We force ourselves to stick to the routine, and it has really helped with providing them and me with some structure to the day. I've also encouraged them to keep a daily journal of this time. It is, after all, an historic event we're living through right now. And to have a day-to-day log of the events and how they're feeling, I feel will be invaluable for their future selves and also as a strategy for helping to manage their current mental health. And I'm finally going to have some time to get around to all the things I previously didn't make time for, like finishing that online photography course. I have more of an appreciation for teachers, healthcare workers, petrol station operators, supermarket workers, the researchers who are working so hard on a vaccine for this and other treatment options. All the people out there who are helping with essential services for the rest of us. Thank you if you're one of these people. You are appreciated. Take care, everyone. Stay safe and sending big virtual hugs to you all.
Allora ciao, io mi chiamo Professore Dave, io ti voglio insegnare tutte le cose sulla scienza. Parliamo di fisica, di chimica, biologia, astronomia, matematica e tante altre cose. Guardami su YouTube, arrivederci. Hey everyone, this is Professor Dave. I want to teach you about all kinds of things regarding science. I want to tell you about physics. I want to tell you about chemistry, biology, astronomy, math, and many, many more things. Come check me out on YouTube. The channel is called Professor Dave Explains. Take it easy.
He knows a lot about the science stuff. Professor Dave Explains.
And now, a reading from the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham.
Hi, my name is Tim Mendham. I'm the Executive Officer of Australian Skeptics Inc. I'm also the editor of our magazine, The Skeptic. And this time we're looking at one of our challenges, which was about water divining at Mitta. This is part 2 of that article covering the tests themselves. And this appeared in The Skeptic, June 2013, which is volume 33, number 2. This was written by Steve Roberts, one of our committee members, and a good man with mathematics, as he had to be because this covered a lot of statistics. But his report is looking at the tests themselves. The annual Mighty Mitta muster takes place at Mitta, a town near Albury-Wodonga. Well, 2 hours drive, Steve says, so it's not really near anywhere. In March 2013, the Skeptics repeated their tests of water dowsers, first held there in 2001 and 2002. This time, we made several changes to the test protocols to accommodate practical considerations and to present the challenge to the dowsers in the fairest way possible. A lot of people do not think scientifically, and it was an interesting and relevant challenge for us to offer our tests in a way that could be easily understood and seen to be fair. We had the free use of the Mitta tennis court and surrounding grassy areas. We had a lot of volunteers, not only from the local group, the Borderline Skeptics, but also from Melbourne and Sydney. We had to devise ways of preparing and setting out the samples that were practical and fair without revealing the contents. With $100,000 of Australian Skeptics' money at stake, the temptation to cheat had to be accounted for and avoided. We were gratified not to see any attempt to cheat, and none of the dowsers complained that our test was unfair, except for one gentleman who protested that our sand had minerals in it, which it probably did. So here's a bit about the test setup. An immediate obligation for us is to have clear wording for the challenge. Problems arise with such phrasings as the bottles contain a mixture of water and sand, which could be misinterpreted. Likewise, does better than chance mean any score more than 10 out of 20? We decided to present 2-litre plastic milk cartons, each one full of either water or dry sand. The containers were wrapped in canvas bags so one couldn't see the contents. The sand ones were carefully made the same weight as the water ones, and you could not distinguish them by sloshing them about, though you could still tell the contents by squeezing them or seeing how they bounced. It follows that whoever set out the containers on the ground had to be kept away from the dowsers, or at least should not be able to claim the prize. As dowsers have whinged in the past, and did so again, about impure water, city water, etc., we used local sand and took our water from the foaming rapids of the Mitta River at the site. This freezing cold water gave problems with condensation, but we managed to wipe the cartons enough to hide it. Now, how many containers should there be, and at what odds? In 2001, we had used 20 samples randomly filled, 13 sand and 7 water. In 2002, we tried to be fair to the dowsers by having 25 samples and letting them discard 5 attempts and choose what they thought would be their best 20 results. This was impossible to explain and caused more chaos and disputes, as well as making it harder for us to analyse the results. If there were 10 sand and 10 water samples, and the dowsers knew this, then their scores could be biased toward getting a 10-10 result, and this makes it harder to analyse. But in 2001, with 13 sand samples, anyone who guessed 20 sands would have got 13 out of 20 right. This year, we wanted to do more than one test. We were trying to get as much data as possible to make a decent histogram of results. We decided to again have 20 samples, but to conduct multiple tests with rearranged samples, and to guarantee that there would be between 8 and 12 sand or water samples out of the 20. This was accomplished by preparing 28 samples, yes, 28, bear with me, of which 14 were sand and 14 water. 2 of each were laid out at the start of the course as known samples, 1 unwrapped and 1 wrapped in the same canvas bags we were using. These had to be dowsed correctly to avoid dowsers simply saying they were unable to perform for whatever reason. The remaining 24 samples were then dumped into a wheelbarrow at random, in privacy, which was taken out onto the tennis court by 2 of us, one of whom then drew a playing card to determine a location 1 to 20. The other person grabbed any sample off the wheelbarrow and put it there, handling it carefully to avoid visibly shaking it. The dowsers were then let out, one by one, each with a clipboard bearer who wrote down their results, in 2 copies, one of which was given to the dowser. After the dowsing, the samples were visibly tipped out of the bags to show what they were. The dowsers then all felt the need to re-dowse and see where they went wrong. And they all did, none scoring above statistical chance. The exposed samples were then collected and in privacy rebagged and put back into the wheelbarrow. In this way we could clear the whole field and set it up again in 10 minutes. And we ran 3 separate tests, with the samples not correlated across tests. Doing this was simpler than it sounds, but a lot of work went into working it all out. From past experience, we knew there would be havoc and uncontrollable crowds on the day, and we had to work within that. For this reason, it was not possible to exhibit our $100,000 prize, plus $10,000 added locally for the day. To the crowds of people that sort of money would attract would have disturbed the dowsers and presented risks of cheating and theft. It's our money, and we make the rules. Now we look at checking the odds. We decided to set up odds of about 1,000 to 1 against succeeding by chance on the day, and this performance would have to be repeated on another day to claim the $110,000. Allowing factors for costs involved and the odds actually being a bit less than 1,000 to 1, it was fair for the dowsers to pay $1 to play, and all the money we raised was donated to the Mitta muster. The odds against a score of 17 out of 20, or better in a single trial, would be about 776 to 1, and the odds against a score of 18 out of 20 or better would be about 4,970 to 1, about, because the distribution of samples is not exactly random, and for practical factors. Since we encouraged the dowsers to have several goes, we decided to take a score of 18 out of 20 or more on any trial they chose as the criterion for success. We initially thought that if someone got, say, 10, 11 and 18 out of 20, we would add these to make 39 out of 60, which is 73 to 1, an insignificant score when there are dozens of competitors. The dowser, however, would view this as a success of 18 out of 20, ignoring the other poor results, and would want the prize. One of the 52 dowsers in 2001 scored 13 out of 20, and then tried to argue that as he had dowsed 13 samples as sand, and there were 13 sand samples in total, even if they weren't exactly the ones he had identified, he considered that he had won and would be sending the cheque. He then tried to litigate against us with comparable success. So we decided that the only way to explain this fairly and visibly to non-mathematicians was to allow a free choice of any set of 20 results in exchange for making the required score, as high as 18 out of 20, in the event nobody achieved this. Here's a section of the article called The Best Score, and despite the heading, it is actually a serious mistake to use the phrase the best score unless it is statistically significant, which none were all day, but we'll do it anyway. The highest scoring was by a young girl who got 13, 15 and 13 out of 20. The best result that can be made of this is 41 out of 60, 322 to 1. Her dowser father, bristling with paternal pride, himself got 8, 9 and 16. Choosing the score of 16 out of 20, that is 169 to 1 against chance. These figures are nowhere near significant, given that these results were freely chosen from the 79 independent trials we conducted. So another year, another dowsing test, another bell curve of results, closely fitting the Gaussian normal distribution to be expected by pure chance. Why did we do this? When as skeptics we were pretty sure what the results would be? Well, it was great fun. We stayed at Mitta a couple of nights, we had beer and barbecues, we toured the area, and we met with old friends and made new friends from interstate. But most of all, it was to be able to conduct a fair scientific test in the real world and to demonstrate to ourselves and everyone else how to do that. We ourselves learned a lot about devising a practical, explainable, cheat-proof protocol and calculating real-world odds. If anyone had performed above chance, $110,000 would be nothing to what could be made on the back of that sort of success. Several of the dowsers came from a nearby valley, which the locals know as a place with, not many rich people. A good closing comment is from one of the dowsers chatting with his family, saying he did well to get 12 out of 20, which is sort of above average. Being within earshot, I pointed out that due to the number of tries he'd had, and the randomness inherent in reality, his score was not better than average. Well, I don't mind being average, he reasonably concluded. Steve wishes to add that all the dowsers were nice people, generally with a constructive attitude, and he wished them well. He didn't want the skeptics to keep picking on dowsers for all of our tests, but the charlatans out there know that we are serious in our challenge, and they have been warned. That was part 2 of our articles on divining at Mitta, appeared in the Skeptic magazine June 2013, which is volume 33, number 2. And you can download all of these Skeptic magazines from our website at www.skeptics.com.au. Look up the Tag magazine and scroll down, and you'll find 39 years worth of magazines there to have a look at. In the next instalment, I'll be looking at the third part of our Mitta challenge, and that's looking at the people involved, the diviners themselves.
Hallo aan alle Nederlandse luisteraars. Op dit moment bent u aan het luisteren naar de Skeptic Zone, voor wetenschap en kritisch nadenken. Voor meer informatie ga naar www.skepticzone.tv.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone in these strange times. And speaking about strange things, the other week on the show you would have heard me talking about some dodgy advice when it comes to COVID-19, including somebody offering a test via the phone using the discredited modality of applied kinesiology. That was an outfit called Bayside Kinesiology in Queensland. And it's sort of inspired me to try something with all of your help over the next weeks, months. If you spot advertisements, signs or whatever online, or if you're out and about doing your shopping, exercising, and you spot signs for COVID-19, coronavirus, offering treatments or testing or something like this will boost your immunity against the disease from, dare I say, quacks, woo merchants, alternative medicine, energy healers, vitamins, that sort of thing, I will ask you to take a picture, take a screen cap, note the details, where, when, and eventually I'll get you to send those in. I haven't decided where we're going to put those just yet. And we can have a reference, a catalogue, a list of people making these outrageous and dangerous claims at this terrible time. And then maybe we can do something about it, or at least we'll have a reference. So keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open. I know there's been some already. More about that in the coming months. Also, for those of you stuck at home with kids or just by yourself or whatever, if you go to the Facebook page of the Skeptic Zone podcast, and you can find the link on the show notes, or if you just go to Facebook and look up the Skeptic Zone podcast, I've been posting lately some origami videos. Now, some years ago, when was it, 2008, my good friend Gary Clark and I made a DVD called DVD Origami, and it's got lots of models, fun models to make. Well, I'm posting up the videos day by day at the Skeptic Zone Facebook page for you to fold along at home. And people have been doing it. I've been quite pleased. People fold along the models and post up the photographs. You might enjoy that. On Facebook, and probably elsewhere, there's a picture going around with the word corona, C-O-R-O-N-A, which has 6 letters. And some bright spark has figured out that if you add up all the letters together in the English alphabet, the total of those letters comes to 66. So you get corona 6, and the total 66, and they say, oh look, it's 666, and why we might think that's a fun coincidence or interesting, there are actually some people taking it seriously. I kid you not. And so I did a little bit of work, and I was looking for other words, 6-letter words, that also equal 66. I was hoping to find a word related to the paranormal, but I came up with the word family. So there you go. If corona equals 666, so does the word family. And you can see that also at the Skeptic Zone Facebook page. Coming up on next week's show, the last in the series of the water divining story with Tim Mendham, more logical fallacies with Michelle Bijkersma, and whatever the week will bring us. And if this last month has taught us anything at all, is that you never know what's coming. Which reminds us once again that these thousands of people around the world who claim they can predict the future with psychic powers, etc., etc. And I've been doing a lot of research on this, as you may well know. I hope by the end of the year to produce a major paper on psychic predictions. But no spoilers, roughly 90% of what psychics and seers and soothsayers say about the future is wrong. About 90% on average. And lastly, as ever, and now more important than ever, thank you. Thank you to the Patreons and PayPal supporters who have kept with the Skeptic Zone. Of course, it means more to me than you can possibly know, because I really do want to keep this show going for your entertainment and your education. if you're out doing your daily exercise, which I hope you're doing, or stuck at home, I hope the show means something to you. And I really do thank you people who contribute at skepticzone.tv. Thank you so much. But for this week, from a very quiet and eerie Sydney, Australia, this is Richard Saunders signing off. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation. Hello to all the... Come here. Hello to all the afterthoughts, the people who listen after the music. It's Richard Saunders here with... No, what? She just ran out of the room. Maud, the skeptical cat, was just here wanting a scratch on the back. Come on, come on inside. Come on. I'll get the back scratcher out. Here we are. It's just... Oh, suddenly there's a cat. What do you want? Do you want a back scratch? Yeah? All right, I'll give you a... There we go. How's that? Okay, now it's time for the dice game. And this week, because people are doing lots of things at home and I'm posting origami videos online, this week I'm going to use a six-sided die made from paper. I kid you not. Here it is. I know you can't see it, but it's not a cube. It's sort of a weird six-sided shape regardless. Have to look that up. Anyway, it works. It works. So, everybody at home, use your psychic abilities. Yeah. There is lots of comment on the internet at the moment how psychics completely and utterly failed to predict the biggest event since World War II, but there you go. We might do more of this later. Predict away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. Here we go. What number are you thinking of? Rolling the origami dice. 5. First number this week is 5. All right. Next number coming up. Predict away. It is 4. 5 and 4. All right. Oh, that's my age. How about that? And the last one. 2. This week's origami numbers are 5, 4, and 2, and origami cat thrown in somewhere. No, she's gone.